So
All right, we're live. WatchWell live, September 7th. We are live,
2023.
2023.
just in case we were confused.
Yeah. So, how are you fellas this evening?
Doing well.
Me too.
We have the best intros in streaming. We have the
That's a wrap,
we've got
guys.
that
Yeah.
we've got that part down
All
for
right,
sure.
that's a great
Just
live
the
episode. We'll see you guys
how you
next
guys
week.
I'm a little tired, but I'm hanging in there. So I'm excited to be part of this. It sounds like from your from the pre agenda or whatever, we got some fun stuff going on. So
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Nick, how's preparing for your sermon?
going well.
Yeah. When do you preach?
Sunday.
This Sunday. Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I didn't know that. Cool. Are
I'm
we
I'm
what's
allowed
the
to?
guest
topic?
I'm
Oh,
guest I'm guest preaching at another church on Sunday.
Oh, nice. Cool. Good for you. Are we allowed to know the topic or no? You got to keep that on the confidential list.
I can tell you I'm preaching out of Acts 2.
I
Oh,
thought he was gonna say
you're
preaching out of
preaching
the
on
Bible.
Acts 17:22. Is that what I heard you say?
You got the 2 right.
Okay.
Yeah, you got the 2 right.
Oh man. Dun-dun-ch. I need a drum roll in here. Little joke. Dad joke. Cool. Well, I'm glad that you're preaching. That's cool.
Mhm.
And we will actually be at your house in 2 weeks, right?
Sounds right.
Yeah. We'll
Yep.
record an episode there. We'll be in the studio together. How long has it been? Has it been since what is a woman?
No, we did a quiet place 2 in studio together. So probably since then.
Oh, you're right. We did. Because remember the hope, was it hope? Yeah, the hope
Mhm.
came out of his mouth. Remember
Yeah.
that? That was such a good
Mhm.
episode. If you guys are watching and you haven't seen that episode, go back and listen to A Quiet Place Part 2 after you watch the movie, one of our episodes. It was good. That was a lot of fun to do
Mhm.
and break that one down. Brody, you'll have to go back and watch that one.
I will.
It's really good, or listen to it. But for those that are listening later or those that are listening now, I'm not sure. I don't think we have anybody listening right now, but uh, we're the WatchWell Podcast. My name is Parker, and my co-host is Nick, and he's in the blue shirt. Nick, wave, say hi. And then Brody is helping us out, and he joins us on the lives every now and then to hang out with us and talk Bible and movies. Again, we're the WatchWell Podcast, and the goal of our podcast is to use movies to bring about worldview that the modern art cinema is bringing to uh, the table to discuss, and we hold that up against Scripture and talk about it, discuss it, and uh, it usually falls flat. Sometimes it supports Scripture, and there's good takeaways and stuff like that. So yeah, good stuff, man. Any other podcast episodes, Nick, that you've thought about recently that we've done in the past?
Recently, I don't know. I thought Mario was really good. That was most recent, the most recent one that we've done. I like that one a lot. I think it's a really good episode. I kind of wish we would have done it earlier when Mario was in theaters, but
I agree.
I mean, other than that, I think the episode itself is really good. So if you've seen Mario, you should definitely go check out that episode. And if you're looking for fun ways to engage your kids in some type of biblical content and help train with worldview and things like that, when we do movies like that, it's a good opportunity. Even if your kids don't listen with you, just it's a good opportunity to get some takeaways and maybe some discussion points that you can talk with them about after they watch the movie. Why do you like this? Why do you not like this? Just kind of things like that might help with some worldview building and training.
Yeah, for sure. I totally agree. Cool. Here I have IMDb pulled up. I'm trying to navigate to coming soon. Here we go. So just some thoughts. Nick, you and I mentioned this topic a little bit as we kind of go through some of these trailers. The very first movie that's coming out, and I mean, it's September 8th, so it comes out tomorrow, and it's really prepping us for Halloween. So
What is it?
It's September. It's called The Nun 2. It's a sequel, obviously.
I haven't seen the first one.
And I haven't seen the first one either. I don't know much about it. But I thought we could at least, before we, read a little bit about this movie, I kind of thought it would be fun for the three of us to talk about Halloween and how it relates to Christians and if Christians should participate. You're smirking because we kind of brought this up a little bit earlier.
Yeah, and I completely forgot that we were actually planning on bringing this up. So this is like, it's hitting me in the face. I forgot about it. So yeah.
Yeah, no, we're good. Hey, it's live, right? We're live. So yeah, I thought we would kind of jump in there and see what everybody thought. I mean, I don't see anything wrong with participating in Halloween.
Mm-hmm.
I think it really depends on why you participate and like really what you attribute to what you're celebrating as like the holiday and how you navigate that. And then I have, just to play devil's advocate, I have after you guys talk a little bit, I have let's see. I have a devil's advocate kind of counter argument that may be good, maybe bad.
For all of us agreeing.
Yeah.
You're okay.
Yeah.
Because we do agree. I mean, at least you and I, Brody, will be able to talk in a second. But I mean, I have no problem with Halloween, really, and having kids participate and wearing costumes and all of that stuff, and getting candy and all of that. I know a lot of people would say it's like a historically, it originates from like pagan rituals and things like that, which actually, I've been reading a little bit about it, which seems like it's not actually true. And I know we're probably not going to go into a lot of depth, and I don't necessarily want to either. But yeah, I see no problem with participating in a Halloween.
Brody, what do you think?
I don't either. I mean, we grew up with costumes and stuff like that. I think there are things about Halloween that dance on the line. So it's not like I'm a full-blown Halloween advocate. There are things about Halloween that I'm like, okay, I don't want to. I think if like you dress your whole house up in like darkness and like scary things and whatever, and I think if you're celebrating fear, I think that's the stuff that I disagree with, but not from a biblical perspective, but more of just a personal one. But like as far as like the fun things about Halloween, and the only reason I say not from a biblical perspective is because I don't have anything that would back that up. But personally speaking, I don't think I would send my kid up to a dimly lit spider-webbed house where there's no like fun, if that makes sense. But that's kind of where I'm at. But as far as like Halloween goes and Christians being against it, I can't remember. I tried looking it up real quick, but Halloween itself, I'm pretty sure started as not as a Christian thing, but like there was a saint involved, and I can't remember, so don't quote me on that, but I'm throwing it out there just in case.
I'm about to quote you, Brody.
Do it, dude.
I'm about to quote you. Here, let me read this real quick. And this is coming from the most accurate of Webosphere sources. Wikipedia.
Wikipedia.
So,
Mhm.
yeah, you knew exactly where I was going with that. So it says Halloween is a celebration observed in many countries on 31st of October, the eve of the Western Christian feast of All Saints' Day. It begins the observance of All Hallowtide, the time in the liturgical year dedicated to remembering the dead, including saints, martyrs, and all of the faithful departed.
Look at that. I sort of know some things.
So Brody knows one fact.
And not even a
One
whole one.
historical fact.
And not
Half a
all of
fact.
it.
Yeah,
I think
it's like
he's
half
I
a fact.
feel.
I'm gonna give you credit for the entire paragraph, but for the record, you said saints. That's the only thing that you that you matched out of all that. But you get credit for the whole thing, man.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
No problem. So I thought that was interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The show Cultish, the
Yeah.
podcast Cultish, they recently, I don't know if they've done an episode on it or not, but they had a social media post that breaks down the false claims of like pagan origins and things like that. It was kind of interesting to read.
Well, now that you bring up pagan origins, it's interesting to me. I think last Christmas there was a bunch of hoopla about pagan origins around Christmas.
Yeah.
And I had never heard that before. So and I can't really go into any more. I just remember hearing that and I thought it was really interesting. I was like,
Yeah.
didn't know.
It's kind of a common thing for non-Christians. It's kind of they like it, it's when I hear it, it's usually used as kind of like a gotcha moment to Christians, like
Yeah.
to point out that
That's how it
you know
was
it
used. Yeah.
really like trying to point out that Christ was never in Christmas. We put him there, and it's just restoring it back to take Christ out of Christmas because um, like the commercialization and stuff like that, and a lot of Christians will talk about let's remember the reason for the season and appropriately talk about stuff like that. But that's the response is
Right.
well, Christmas isn't actually a Christian holiday to begin with, and which also is not true. There's a
Right.
ton of stuff debunking that claim, and it's also kind of ridiculous and not true. But
Right. Yeah. So that's okay, so
so
not
before you
even
go any,
go ahead.
I got something. So like, skip this question if you're going to continue on with Halloween, but on kind of a different topic, still focused in that area. What about horror movies? Because during this season, as we get into fall, people tend to watch more horror movies. You got this one coming out in the theater.
And we actually, to go along with that, I don't mean to cut you off, but I'm going to anyway. We actually have a horror movie coming up on the review.
Mm-hmm.
So
Once I watch it,
once you watch it,
I have to watch it.
it's
seen it
real
yet.
good, by the way. Real good. You'll give it a 2.
Out of
20. So yeah, but no, I agree with that. So we've got a horror movie coming to the review podcast, and Halloween's coming up. I agree. I think that it depends on the movie. That's where I sit. Me personally, I think that sometimes I did kind of cut you off, Nick. Do you want to finish what you were saying, or do you want me to keep rolling here?
I think I got the main point out there. I was just kind of repeating myself. So.
Okay, so I think it depends on the movie for myself. I tend to be okay with thriller, border like into horror, if that makes sense. But when you start talking about demonic stuff, I get a little iffy about that. Now,
Which
I'm
is
not,
the one that we're gonna do though.
well, I think it depends on the way that the demonic story is portrayed on screen. I'm talking personally. I don't necessarily know if
sure.
it's sinful to watch a horror movie or anything like that. I'm not talking in
Did
that
you-
space at all.
Are there any examples of horror movies that you've intentionally not watched because of that? Like, can you think of an example? I know you're kind of on the spot. You probably haven't thought about it.
I know that I have. I don't know if I could think of the movie. So, some of the horror movies I've seen are Paranormal Activity.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen those, and those were in college because it was the thing to do. And
Mhm.
then
They were selling movies.
I went a really long time after watching those without watching another horror movie. Like years and years, like probably almost a decade. Um, so Paranormal Activity, I think I only saw the first two, I think. Um, because so let me ask you this question. Do you view the Saw movies as horror? I
I
think
think
it's
they're
classified
in
as
the
horror.
horror. Yeah, they're in the horror genre.
So I've seen those. It's been a long time. I think I've only seen the first 3 or 2.
Not,
And I think
I know
there's
I've
like
seen them, but I
12
don't
of
know
them
how
now
many.
or something.
There's a lot,
There's a lot of them.
and
And then
another
they're
one
coming out with a
coming
new one.
out
Yeah,
sometime
yep,
soon.
you're right. Yeah, for sure. So I guess a lot of that's just a bunch of word vomit to say that because before the Paranormal Activities movies came out, I think I watched Kayla, what was that movie? We watched in the basement of my parents with my cousins. The Devil Inside. You remember that movie?
Mm.
Actually, that's one that I refuse to watch. I
So
wouldn't
I
watch it.
so I watched that in the dark in a basement, unfinished basement. It was a real bad idea. It was a real bad idea. Uh, so I did watch that one, and then I'm trying to think. Maybe like here, let me look up. You guys can answer the question. I don't know. I'm gonna see if I can find this movie.
What about you, Brody? What do you think of horror movies?
I think like Parker said, it sort of depends on the movie and the message and what is to be gotten out of it. But I also would answer that about any genre.
Hmm.
Um, I think I think at the end of the day, does that movie violate or make you want to violate Christ's commandments? And I think that's a question that, or principles, whatever you want to answer, or however you want to word that. I think that's a question that has to be asked with every movie. Because I think, like, the new Disney movies or the Barbie movie, those aren't horror movies, but I wouldn't go see them except for the purpose to exploit them, if that makes sense. Um, like other than like topics of conversation, I wouldn't have zero interest in watching them. So that's kind of my answer on horror.
Hmm.
Personally, I don't like. I already have like an overactive imagination, and so um, I don't like anything that would like kind of spark that. Though I did go and see Split when it came out in theaters, and I really
That's
enjoyed
not
that
a
movie.
horror movie.
No, I
It's
know, I know.
classified as one.
I know, but
I
it's a
thought it was
wrong
classified as a
classification.
Yeah, it
That's
wasn't.
wrong.
It was more of like a intense thriller. I don't know that I've ever actually watched a horror movie. Um, like Split would be the number one thing that I've ever seen.
So
Hmm.
I think I have to take back what I said because I can't find the movie. I think I have specifically like I'm not watching that because of whatever like gave me that kind of feeling. But as I look through some of these horror movies, I've seen quite a few of them.
Like which ones?
Remember the movie 1408 with
Yeah,
Samuel L.
that's
Jackson?
based on a Stephen King book. I actually
Yeah,
really like that movie.
that's a really good movie. There's a movie on here that I saw the trailer of that I kind of wanted to see called "You Should Have Left" with Kevin Bacon and Amanda Seyfried. There's a movie here called
Never heard
"Would
of
You
that one.
Rather" that I've seen. Escape Room. "Would You Rather's" with Brittany Snow. There's a movie called It Fall. None of these are like endorsements to go watch these movies, by the way. This is just me talking about movies
Neither is
I've seen.
Barbie.
Um, there you go. Did you go see Barbie, Brody?
No, no, not yet.
Or is it
I
just
like
a
Mark.
horror movie in your view? Is it just a horror movie?
It is. They're all the same.
They're
But I
all
like Margot Robbie and Jake Gyllenhaal, so I would go see it. I
Is
would go
Jake
see it for the
Gyllenhaal in it?
purpose.
Ryan Gosling
it's
is in
Ryan
it.
Right.
Gosling.
It's I do this. I do that all the time.
You really like a guy you don't even know his name. You like this actor.
I
You just don't.
do. I do really like Jake Gyllenhaal.
That's so
Um,
funny.
but with it being Ryan Gosling, I don't know that I could care less. So
Yeah. So I think though you left off at It Follows. I've seen that one, and I thought it was decent.
I thought it was really stupid, actually.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's see. I actually let me clarify that. I think the movie could have been better. I actually liked the idea.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Um, I don't know if that would be one that we should review or not.
I don't
Let's see.
remember a lot from it. It's been a long time since I've seen it.
Which one? It Followed?
It follows.
Is
Like
that
right here.
related to the
I don't. Some of these
series
horror
or
movies
no?
aren't horror movies.
No.
No.
But I haven't seen Us.
Is that Billie Eilish?
I haven't seen Us, and I haven't seen Get Out.
I haven't seen that either.
But
So I do think. I think I'm with you. I don't think there's any. I don't see a reason. Actually, I'm kind of all over the place right now. But the church that I'm speaking at this Sunday, the pastor's wife said that she would listen to more of our episodes if we reviewed horror movies.
really,
Because she just she loves horror movies. That's her favorite genre of movie. So
I wonder why.
um,
Can we get her on the podcast?
I don't know. Maybe she's listening.
Maybe we'll do a movie review, and we'll let her pick the horror movie.
Maybe.
That
Yeah.
would be fun. I'm
She
game.
really likes horror movies.
Wonder what her
I do think
favorite horror movie is.
I think one of the interesting things about horror movies, so like if you're gonna watch something, watch well, right? Watch it well. Even
Right.
so, that's kind of the plug. Maybe that should be our tagline at the end of every
If
episode.
you're gonna watch it,
going to
watch it
watch,
well. I
watch
love it.
well.
Yep.
Yeah.
I kind of like that.
So now I've forgotten where I was going, but
You said it's something interesting, and you were talking
Yes,
about
to watch it
Pastor's
well.
Wife horror movies.
something. I think it's an interesting way to explore like trauma because and negative and bad things that have happened to people because I think that's kind of what horror movies are representing. They're an extreme version of people's fears and the pain that they've experienced in their life and kind of showing it to them. And then a really good horror movie will bring a conclusion that resolves all of that. So, and a bad horror movie just is there for the sake of just giving you scare after scare after scare after scare with no resolution, and you just have a few moments like you're in a haunted house, but or a haunted corn maze or something. But a good horror movie will make you feel terrified because of what's happening on screen, and then bring it all to a resolution where there's some type of like catharsis and release. And just so to me, those are horror movies that are worth watching. Usually, probably more like thrillers than anything, but it could even be like the paranormal or things like that. But
Yeah. So sorry, I had a thought, and then well, here real quick. So Kayla says I dislike all horror movies. They make me unsettled, and I think that is my spirit guiding me that they aren't good for me. I think that's a lot of people.
mm-hmm.
A lot of Christians.
I think that's pretty much where I'm at too.
So let me ask this question, kind of going off of that. So, because this kind of the question, or at least maybe I should say the statement, kind of got me thinking about, like, okay, so what would be the difference between actively engaging in a horror film and watching the story and opening? Just kind of follow me, humor me here for a second to get this out. So you're opening the door, right, to the story. How is that any different than actively participating with a Ouija board? And I'm just throwing this out there for discussion. And I know I'm putting you guys on the spot, so
I think it would be kind of the same as watching a movie with an abuser. How is that any different than participating in the abuse? Right, because a Ouija board is an actual thing that I'm attempting to communicate with some unseen, unheard entity. I'm trying to
right.
get messages from this unseen realm or something like that, and it's unknown, and I can't see who it is, and the assumption is just demonic and things like that, or at least paranormal in some way, if not demonic. But then just sitting down and watching a movie and a story play out, I don't think that in and of itself is opening the door to those things, unless, which some people would be doing this, but for me it wouldn't be this. Unless I'm sitting down because there's something that I want to experience that happens within that world, right? So let's say like the paranormal activities movies. I wouldn't say just sitting down and watching that is opening the door to any type of demonic oppression or possession, unless I then take what I see in that movie and dwell on it and long for whatever it is that took place. Like I don't think that just watching is opening the door for that kind of activity. It could be unsettling and uneasy, and it could maybe take my mind to a place that isn't good, and I shouldn't watch it if that's me. Like Kayla was saying, but I don't think it's actually opening the door to any kind of demonic activity. Just like I don't think Harry Potter is opening the door to potential witchcraft.
Right.
Right. So it's I would put that in the same thing. I don't want people to go practice witchcraft. Right. But I don't have a problem with Harry Potter movies.
Right.
So, those are just some of my initial thoughts.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. Absolutely agree. Yeah, and at this point, because we read that Wikipedia and we defined it as stemming from a Christian thing, I don't necessarily know if my counter argument to our position makes any sense. So I'm not going to bring it up.
So once again, the opposition has no voice on our podcast.
Right, right. I mean, I can tell you guys, I just don't think that it's good because
No, it's fine.
Yeah.
I'm not concerned about it.
my thought is if Halloween does stem from, so let's just pretend for a second that we didn't read that, right? Let's pretend that that's not true. It's on Wikipedia. Let's just say it's an unreliable source. That's not true. And the belief is that it does stem from pagan communicating with the dead, celebrating evil and demonic things, for lack of a better term. Mm-hmm. If a Christian took part in that, how is that any different than a Christian taking part in yoga or something like that? That was my comparison.
Okay.
It seems to be kind of debunked after we found, kind of read that about that, but that was kind of the first thing I thought of was, okay, well, if Halloween is okay for a Christian, then how is yoga not? Mm-hmm. But but the roots of both of those have to be similar or have to be have the same foundation for that argument to work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they would be. But so if we want to assume that the pagan origins were true, I would say that the potential difference is what transformation has this thing undergone since its inception. I think you'd have to think about that. Like, was the pagan origins and the origin of Halloween, if that were true, or the claim that says it was it seriously just people dressing up in a costume and going and saying trick or treat at their neighbors' doors and grabbing candy? Like, is that what it was? Is that what communicating with other spirits was in this thing that used to be Halloween?
Yeah, so you're equating the mere existence of it. The reason for the existence of it is for pagan worship, for it to even be on the same level as yoga and Christians doing
right
yoga.
Because yoga, the poses actually are themselves meant to symbolize adoration of certain gods. So like when you're doing that pose, you're partaking in something that was invented specifically for worship. And so I would never, and I think I told you this, I would never if a Christian has absolutely no apprehension about doing yoga and it just comes up in casual conversation that they were doing yoga, I'm not gonna say, okay, hold on now, we gotta stop that. I just think it's unwise and that it's
Right.
more
Not
beneficial. It's
beneficial. Yeah.
one of those things in First or Second Corinthians where Paul says all things are permissible, but not all things are beneficial.
Right.
Like so, and I would put yoga in that category. Could you do it and it just be exercise? Probably, yes. But when you know about what those things you're doing actually mean, is it wise? Would be the
Right.
question. And
Because my only refutation to that would be like, so Kayla and I were actually talking about this the other night, and it was interesting because there are some positions that are like just exercises.
mm-hmm.
Like they would be exercises outside of that. So like for instance, very basic, a plank. So like obviously it seems like there's a spectrum to me. So like is like can you just never do a plank again?
Well, so like
You know what I'm saying? It seems like there has to be a spectrum of that because if
so
if that position was created regardless of what that person believes, if that position was created to mimic the position an idol was created in, like anybody that does a plank is worshiping that regardless of how they feel or what their intentions are.
so then the question is that a pose that originated with yoga, or is that something that yoga brought in as an extra thing?
That would be
Or
a good
has that
clarification. Yes.
always been part of yoga? Or do our modern yoga studios and things like that just bring it in because they view it as a good exercise to add to the routine?
Yeah.
Like, so
Right.
all of those, I would ask for clarification on those, and I don't know the answer.
Right. I'm not sure either. It looked as if it looked as if, I mean, and who knows what article we were reading. We were just kind of Googling, and it looked as if it was a position. But when like if yoga, like, okay, so then here's another thing. What if it's a developmental thing? So all of a sudden now this new position they come out with that's a part of yoga is that, can they swallow all exercise positions? And then it
What do you mean?
becomes,
Can they?
so let's say they add 4 new positions. Are we no longer allowed to do those positions, or are you saying that the position is dates all the way back to when yoga started?
That.
That, okay.
So it had to have
Well,
been created for the purpose of worship
and
in
it
that
can't
time frame.
it can't
They
be
can't take something else and then say, here's a bench press. We've been doing that as just a bench press, and now we're going to take bench press and throw it into yoga, and now no one else who's not worshiping our God can ever do a bench press again. Like,
even
that
if
doesn't
they,
make
yeah,
sense to
yeah,
me.
yeah.
But
It doesn't make sense to me either.
so it would just be, I don't know that it's possible to create a brand new pose out of nothing that no one has used.
Right. I guess I'm still
So I don't
stuck.
know.
Like I'm still stuck in between. Like I would agree with your solution, or your not all things are permissible, or all things are permissible but not all things are beneficial, right? I would agree
Hmm.
with that. But then it would also be hard for me to say that a position is also, so it's kind of, to me, I go back to like having a copyright on a chord progression. Like
Hmm.
that's what it makes me think of. So like this chord progression. Sorry, I fumbled over my words. This chord progression can no longer be used by anybody else. And I think actually Ed Sheeran just went through a lawsuit on
Hmm.
this. So that's
And
what
he,
it's like. And he won because you can't have a monopoly on a chord progression.
right.
So how can you have a monopoly on a biological, not a biological, but a physiological position, like body position for an exercise? That's what is hard for me to get behind. Like, obviously, I would say that err on the side of caution, but how can you have a monopoly on that? If the
So I
West,
get-
if the Westerner has no idea that that's what it means, how can that still be attributed to idolization or idol worship? That's
so
where I'm
that
stuck.
that is a really good point, but that would only include yoga that's happening at like the Y, right? Like
Well,
that's like
there's a yoga group.
YMCA class
Right.
yoga, and
There's a yoga
but
group called Holy Yoga, and it's a Christian movement. It's a
right because
Christian yoga.
because the intent their goal would be like it's okay. Their claim would be it's okay to do yoga apart from these things. So then the question is it possible for something to have spiritual significance even if the person practicing it doesn't want it to?
And I would say yes.
So if that's the case, then at the very least, there's the possibility that doing those yoga poses has some type of damaging spiritual significance that a Christian should not participate in. Can we say with certainty that that's the case? Probably not. But if it's possible for someone to participate in something that has spiritual significance and not even be trying to or intending to or not wanting it to be that, if it's still possible that it does have spiritual significance, then it's possible that that's true of the Christian who's practicing yoga, that they're participating in something spiritually significant that is an insult to God.
And
That at the very least, it's a possibility.
and you would still hold horror movies separately from that.
Absolutely. Yeah.
There's no potential for
Yeah.
spiritual.
I wouldn't have a problem with a Christian sitting in the park while a yoga class is going on across the way from them.
So watching's different than participating. You don't look at
Sure.
so you don't. Okay, I got you. No, I just wanted to play a little bit of a devil's advocate a little bit because I tend to agree with you. I'm still kind of, I guess, questioning, but
And
I would
as
say
am
I would
I.
say I'm on your team. I would say I'm on your team about 90%. But
Yeah.
I still don't know. Like,
But that's why I said it, at the beginning that it's not like I wouldn't treat it as law. Like,
right.
as a pastor, I'm not going to bring church discipline on somebody in my church who's done or is in a yoga class sometime. At least I
Right.
don't think I would. Like unless I learn more and have more in-depth understanding of all of that. But as it stands now, I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't like call somebody out and say you shouldn't be doing that. But if someone came to me and said, I had an opportunity to go to this yoga class and I'm really looking to lose weight, what do you think? Should I do that? And they're asking for like pastoral advice or something, I would say probably not a good idea.
Yeah, do
I
jujitsu
don't.
instead.
Yeah, do something else. Maybe there's
Yeah.
another way that you can get the benefits that you're looking for.
Right. Well, there's that.
Yeah.
That was
All
awesome.
of this content that we had no intention of
Yeah,
talking
great
about,
stuff.
except for Halloween, I guess.
Yeah. So let's get back to this nun movie. A priest is murdered. An evil is spreading. The sequel to the worldwide smash hit follows Sister Irene as she once again comes face to face with Valak, the demon nun.
Completely unrelated, but you know what movie we should review?
Nefarious.
Okay, we're going to do that. That's already on the schedule
Can I
for
guess
whenever
again?
I watch it. Yeah, guess again.
Beast.
No. Come on. It's related to what you're talking about right now.
Oh,
It's not just completely out of bounds, but
okay. Because you said like completely changing. Is it so? It's a horror movie.
no.
Oh, it's not a horror movie.
That is not the connection.
I said so. Is the connection in what I just read somehow?
Yeah.
Okay, so
And the title of the movie a little bit.
The Nun. Oh,
Yeah.
are you talking about the Whoopi Goldberg movie?
Yeah, Sister Act.
Sister Act, yeah.
Yeah.
You know how long it's been since I've seen that movie? Oh man.
We actually went to a live play of it like just this year.
Oh yeah.
Sister Act. It was good. Yeah,
Was it?
It's pretty good.
Did you give it higher than a 5?
Out of what? 10?
Come on, man. 10.
5.
Well,
Yeah,
you
I
did
give
say
it a 5.
20 last time, so.
I know, but that's because I was teasing him.
Oh.
My guess. So when we do a review on Nefarious,
Mm-hmm.
which I believe should be our October movie, one of them at least, one of the two. My guess is that you're going to rate it a 3
Out of 10.
out of 10.
So you think I probably won't like it very much.
Yes, because I think
But
you're
you thought it
biased.
was but you thought it was great.
Yeah, but I didn't tell you my rating and why.
Okay.
I'm going to save that because I don't want it to
Okay.
bias you.
Right. Because you think I'm already biased, so you don't want to bring me back to the middle.
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay.
I mean, it's not an 8 or higher. I can tell you that.
Okay.
You can let that cook for a little bit.
I'm just gonna leave it right there. I don't need to
Fair
let
enough.
that cook at all.
Fair enough. Okay, let's do at least one of these. So, most common arguments against Christianity. And I kind of want to do 2 of these, okay? There's 5 that I pulled out of here, but I think we only have time for 2. So, how about I name the 3 that I think we should do, and then you guys can pick the 2. How about that? Is that fair?
Wait. Are we doing 2 or are we doing 3?
So there's 5.
Right.
There's 3 out of the 5. There's 3 that I would be okay doing. I want you guys to pick 2,
Okay.
and then we'll do 2. Is that right? Is that? Do I need?
I just didn't understand what you were saying. Yeah.
No, I got you. I just want to make sure we're all on the same page. So, the problem of evil, religious pluralism, and moral objections.
Okay.
Now, I want to read some of these here before we pick. So, the problem of evil says this argument questions how an all-powerful, all-knowing, and benevolent God can exist in a world where there is suffering, pain, and evil. Critics argue that the existence of such suffering is incompatible with the notion of a loving and all-powerful deity. Okay, religious pluralism. This argument suggests that Christianity is just one of many religions in the world, each with its own claims about the divine. Critics argue that it's arbitrary to privilege one religion over others, and this can lead to intolerance and conflict. Moral objections. Critics sometimes argue that certain moral teachings or actions associated with Christianity, both historically and in the present, are objectionable. This can include issues related to the treatment of women, certain, what do I want to say? Alphabet individuals, I'll say that, or the promotion of beliefs that some view as harmful, which that's a very ambiguous conclusion there to that sentence. You guys follow all of that?
Yeah.
Trying to choose my words carefully here.
I'll let Brody pick. I don't have a preference.
You don't have a preference?
No preference.
Am I picking both?
If you want to pick both, Brody, you can pick both.
So, moral objections was the one that I was going to pick.
Okay.
And the other one that I think will be interesting is religious pluralism.
Okay.
But I also like problem of evil. No, I think the other 2, or I think the 2 that I picked would be the ones that I think would be fun to. I think they're all fun to conversate on, but those are the 2 that I'm picking. So final answer.
Okay, so the last 2. So
Yeah.
so since you picked, you start.
Wow.
Let's start with moral objections.
Moral objections. Okay.
You want me to read the descriptor again?
No, I got it up here. They're objectionable. So maybe give me a question.
So, okay, I'll start here a little bit. So, critics sometimes argue that certain moral teachings or actions associated with Christianity, both historically and in the present, are objectionable. So, when I read that sentence, the first thing that I think of is it's making a moral that sentence is also making a moral claim. So, it's saying that the topic is moral objections, and then right after that, it's saying that critics are making a moral claim about the Bible's moral claim. Does that
I
make
gotcha.
sense?
Okay.
You got
Yeah.
me? So if that's to be true, there's a presupposition that this is holding that is saying that the morality of critics or the critics' morality are more moral than the Bible's morality. Does
That
that make
makes
sense?
sense. Yeah.
That's what I read immediately. Nick, do you want me to recap real quick, or did you follow that?
I think I'm good.
Okay, cool. So, you need anything else, Brody, or is that a good kind of
No,
start?
I think, I mean, you can tell me based on my answer if I understood what you're saying. So I think the argument of good and evil, when you ask somebody what is good and what is evil, it is either a matter of opinion, but it is always based off of what they recognize as an authority. And so for Christians, I think it's the Bible, right? Like the Bible is what does God say is good inside of his realm, and what does he say that is evil. So, and in this sense, I'm using good as in morals. So like
Mm-hmm.
the morality and everything like that. People that are outside of the Bible, what's the residing authority? What, like when you say critics are having a moral objection about the moral objections, what are they basing their moral objections on, if not for an emotional response or what they're feeling in the moment, right?
Are
Does
you
that kind of
asking
make
us?
sense?
Are you asking us, or is it rhetorical?
Well, it's more rhetorical, but am I on the right track?
Yeah, no, you're crushing it, man. I think you're
So,
crushing it. But to
thank
answer
you, I
your
appreciate
question,
that. Yeah,
I think that if you don't use the Bible as an objective moral standard, there's only two other places that you can root morals in, and that's yourself as the moral arbitrator or society.
hmm,
I can't think of, and maybe you guys can help me out, but other than that, it's either self-idolization and it's just what I want is moral, which kind of makes
or what
sense
is
with
society?
the depravity of man and all that, or what people as a collective in that region, society, deem as right and wrong.
And I would even argue that society itself is a mere reflection of the deeper root, which is basically there's only two kingdoms, God and Satan, right?
Well, yeah, but even before, like, if we stay a little bit more superficial than that, the bigger problem is, or maybe not the bigger problem, but it's all subjective, right?
Right.
So what you think is moral and good is based off of your heart and I say your heart as in, um I think in Jeremiah it says the heart is deceitful among all things, right? Is it Jeremiah? I think that's right. Um
I think it says it a couple of different places.
but yeah, I think that um it just is just subjective. So what you think is moral is different than what I think is moral. And then who
Right.
wins in that situation?
Mhm.
So that's kind of a big problem. And then if society, if it's just mob rule on morality, then it's an ever changing thing. It's whoever's in power decides what's moral, or it's what is moral in this place, whatever place that is different than the other place, or what was different in 2020, what's moral in 2023 is no longer moral is moral now, but in 1960 wasn't moral, right?
Right. Right.
So those are just some of my initial thoughts on that.
Yeah,
And
if you
then go ahead, Nick.
if you don't have, so this kind of works for the morality argument and the problem of evil,
It does. It's kind of
because
related, yeah.
Hmm.
so So we might get to do all three. Who knows?
There you
said
go.
you wanted to do. But if you don't have an objective standard outside of yourself, then everything must just be, like you said, subjective. So let's even use like an evolutionary argument, or an argument from like naturalism, that there is no cosmic purpose, there is no like um, objective truth to anything, but yet people who claim that, when something bad happens, experience the same response that somebody who believes in that objective truth, that's objectively evil, does. So
Mhm.
the claim that something awful, whatever you could, I mean, you could list anything, name it, murder, or whatever you think, the claim that that is awful shows that there's some type of, at least partially, some type of common objective. Even as we disagree with things, there's some type of common objective of what's right and wrong that all people have. So there's some type of foundation there. But then when things differ, as we progress from that and things differ, and we say, oh, everyone just knows what's moral, or everyone just knows what's right because we've evolved over time for survival and we know what's right. Well, then that's not right or wrong. That's just what has happened.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's just what has happened. So something, like something that's moral in a cannibalistic tribe wouldn't be moral in the United States, but I can't call the cannibalistic tribe immoral, because my set of morals here that have evolved over time, they aren't an objective right or wrong. They just happen to believe what I think right now, or they just happen to be the way things are right now. And if they've evolved up to this point, then they can continue to evolve in the future to, this thing was moral and it's not now, or this thing was not moral and it is now, which then means there is no standard. That completely.
And if there is no standard, then there is no good and there is no evil.
Exactly. In order to claim something as evil, it has to have a standard that proves it's evil beyond just the simple, we think it's evil right now, right? It has to have some type of lasting objective truth, and the Bible would be that, because most of the things that people bring up, if they bring up the problem of evil, we're talking earthquakes, and we're talking heinous things that even Christians have done to other people. We can pull out our Bibles and read what God expects of people, and read what he says people are supposed to be, and in unison with that person say, yes, this was evil. The problem is that person making the claim, if it's coming from an atheist perspective or a perspective that isn't based on the Word of God, has no foundation for that claim.
Correct.
It's just what they feel in the moment.
Right.
They can be right in that claim, but there's no objective standard for it, which means in the future, that position could very well change.
And where this becomes really practical, exactly what you're talking about, Nick. And I think I mentioned this on a previous live when we talked politics a little bit. I asked you guys about the debates, and exactly what you just explained happened at the Republican debates, where they were asked about a 6-week ban, right? And the majority of them, I was actually really, really shocked with Nikki Haley, because she was very wishy-washy on it, and some of these people claim Christ, like Mike Pence claims Christ. He said he would sign it, but no one came right out and said that it's absolutely wrong to do this, right? It's absolutely wrong. And then what was interesting was later in the debates, so they completely forfeited their claims to anything justice, right? Any justice, whatever, with wishy-washy positions on like pro-life topics. And then later, when they wanted to talk about whatever they were talking about, and they were claiming, no, we need justice for this, it was like, you just forfeited that earlier in your position. And I think that as the WatchWell podcast, that's the whole point in what we do, right? Is we use movies to simulate discovering worldview and pulling out the underlying worldview that we're seeing in plots, character arcs, and what the writers are trying to tell us in the stories, so that we can become better and use that skill to see it in our lives, in real lives, and make it very practical. And that's just an example of what you were talking about, Nick. I thought that was kind of upfront and
And didn't one of the candidates have a quote, something about like that started with the phrase "God is real"? Was that like
yeah, that was I think it was Vivek Ramaswamy said it, and it was a
Yeah.
list of things. It was a list of things that he was saying to appeal to the base.
Yeah.
He says God is real. He's a practicing Hindu.
Yeah. Which so
So
the natural question that should follow that is which God?
which God is real? So now
Yeah.
so we are going to talk about all three topics, because
Yeah.
we just hit moral objections. We're scratching the surface of the problem of evil, and Nick, you just brought up religious pluralism.
Yeah.
So
And that's really the question. That's the
that's
question about religious pluralism and why
it is
should one over is which one's real?
right.
Which
One's
God?
real?
So based on the claims of all these different religions, you have to analyze it. It cannot be the case that they are all true. It's just
Right.
not
That's true.
possible.
It's not
Christianity especially
Right.
claims, Jesus says, "I am the way,
the
the
way.
truth, and the life.
Mhm.
No one comes through the Father but through me." He claims to be the only way to eternal life and salvation. That's exclusive. He opens it up for people to come to him, but in terms of that truth claim, that is a very exclusive truth claim that can't coexist with Islam. It can't, you know, and when I say coexist, I don't mean like a Muslim and a Christian can't live in the same society, because obviously they can. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm
You
saying
just
is
need the bumper sticker.
those two claims do not coexist with one another.
Right.
Like they can't exist in the same. They both can't be true. Um, and you could say that of everything else. So it really just comes down to which one, um, which one demonstrates truth, and all others then must be false. And so if I'm an atheist, let's say, well, no, I'm not going to go that route. Let's say what Vivek said is absolutely true, which is something we would believe. God is real, all right? And God has given certain things to the world that they can know him, okay? God is real. He's the creator of everything. He's the one who decides how things function and how they thrive and all of those things. Why wouldn't someone want to be in line with the exact truth of that being who has created everything and can bring about my thriving in the world and for all of eternity, right? Like it shouldn't just be a matter of let's all just get along and let's say that everything, it's all true. They all have bits and pieces of truth, even though they disagree with each other. They all have bits and pieces of truth. Well, that's not, because if there really is God there who has created everything, then shouldn't we want to know exactly what he has said life should be like and function like, so that we can thrive in his creation? Because a creator gets to determine how things are used and how things work.
Mm-hmm.
And we should be striving to be in line with that. And only one can be true. They all
Right.
can't be true.
Well,
And I think
I don't know. I don't know if is that true. I don't know if I think what you're saying is if now I might be speaking a little bit out of turn here, but if Christianity is true, all of the other ones can't be true.
Absolutely.
But if one of the other ones are true, I think I've heard it quoted that some of them can be true.
Yeah,
So
like if you've ever
I don't mean to
seen,
pick you over on a technicality,
right? Yeah,
but
absolutely. Like, so that there are some that could be true, like, multiple gods, and recognizing, if they're more polytheistic, they might, oh, this is just another god. And
mhm.
now I can, like, if you've seen the movie Life of Pi, which is an
Yeah, yeah,
awesome movie, but the main character, like the structure of that movie is he goes through different gods, and then makes them all cohesive, and he believes in all of them.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So like, but with Christianity especially, that's just not possible.
Right.
Because
That's
the
correct.
exclusive truth claims that are made, and you could say even with something like Islam or Mormonism or Jehovah's Witness or any lots of others, if they are true, then nothing else is.
Who is man, who's that pastor? It's not James White. Oh, I really maybe he's not a pastor. I don't know who he is. Give me a second to look this up because he made a claim. I saw a video and he made a claim because he was asking somebody from a crowd. I think it was after a debate. I think he hangs around the Apologia guys. I don't remember his name. I will have to get it. But he was answering a question about the Quran. I believe it was the Quran. And they were kind of grilling him on the question, and he went through and he talked about the Quran. And one of the things that I thought was interesting that I need to go and do my own research on was he said that if I'm going to get this right, if the Quran is true, the Bible is true, because the Quran is based off of the Bible. And he said, listen to this kind of bait and hook here. He says, if the Quran is true, the Bible is true. And if the Bible is true, the Quran is false. Mm-hmm. And I thought that was really brilliantly worded. So I need to go and do my own research on that. But
yeah, I'd like to hear the reasoning behind that. Like
I cannot. Yeah,
because I don't know enough to know the.
I'll have to when we get off here. I'll try to find it and send it to you both because you guys will really enjoy it. I'll try to find that video, and then maybe we'll link it in the description for those that want to go check it out. Mm-hmm. But yeah, so we talked about pluralism and we talked about moral objections. Let's get to the problem of evil real quick so we can start wrapping this up. Problem of evil.
I think.
Well, I want to. Oh, it is, but I want to kind of go a little deeper. I kind of have some stuff that I want to say here. So this argument questions how an all-powerful, all-knowing, and benevolent God can exist in a world where there is suffering and pain and evil. Critics argue that the existence of such suffering is incompatible with the notion of a loving and all-powerful deity. And this is kind of my issues with the way Andy Stanley words things. Is he's truthy and what is it? Oh shoot, what does he say? It's like love and truth. Gracie met truthy. That's what it is. Gracie met truthy. And it's the way he communicates. They're always in conflict. Is grace and truth. And I don't actually think that's what the Bible teaches. I think the Bible teaches that truth is grace. Like grace is a truth. It's not in conflict. So when you look at what Scripture teaches, and you're talking about the problem of evil, what I see is there's two aspects of God. There's love, because Christ is a part of the Trinity, and we talked before on the hypostatic union. You can't separate the pieces of God. So if Christ is love, then God is love. All of God is love, right? And then you have this justice problem where you have rebels against God, and you can't actually God being equal in his love and equal in his justice cannot just give you a get out of jail free card, because then he would cease to be just. Right? Am I making sense?
Right. Yeah, so far.
Yeah. So he's loving, and he loves his creation who rebelled against him, but he's also perfect. And if he's omnibenevolent, then he cannot be unjust, or else he'd cease to be perfectly good. So that's why it's so important that we focus on Christ, and Christ comes out as everything the gospel is about, is because that is what bridges the gap between God's love and his justice. So he remains just by sending Christ, the God-man, to the world to die on the cross so that he can give unmerited, irresistible grace to the creation that he loves so that he can spend eternity with us by his own doing. So when this says suffering, pain, and evil, how an all-powerful, all-knowing, and benevolent God can exist in a world where there is suffering, pain, and evil, it's not about one or the other. It's not about, oh, if you have a loving God, then he can be unjust, because that's not loving. Right?
Yeah, and there was at one point in this world a non-existent suffering. Like there was no pain and suffering.
Correct.
And then through the action of the creature, disobedience to God, now that propensity, that tendency towards sin is passed down from generation to generation and to generation, and we're all guilty of that. And we all have desires that are not in line with God. And, you know, if you want to look at suffering, so whatever it is that you're calling suffering, if you go to the Bible, God also call it suffering?
Right.
Because if so, then God knows your pain, right? God would also agree with you and say, whatever this is that you're going through is in fact suffering and bad and wrong, but he doesn't just leave it at that. He actually, like what you said, he sent Jesus to fix it.
Right.
And now for those who are in Christ, we are all, if in Christ, we're on our way back to a world that has no pain and suffering, all by God's doing. He's the one who directed all of that.
And it's really interesting how you like all of what you just said, and the entire conversation for the last 15 or 20 minutes has interlinked all of these, because it really comes back to that foundation of objective morality, and it has to come from outside of man.
Mm-hmm.
And when it does, like some of these presuppositions, like critics argue that the existence of suffering is incompatible with the notion of a loving and all-powerful deity. Well, that's a presupposition that the critics have a better understanding of what justice and love and suffering than God does.
Mm-hmm.
You know, critics argue that it is arbitrary to privilege one religion over the others. Well, that's kind of an important distinction to make if one is true and the others aren't.
Right.
And to your point, Nick, who wouldn't want to know that?
Right.
And then for the moral objections, this can include issues related to the treatment of women and sexually identifying individuals, or the promotion of beliefs that some view as harmful. That presupposition is saying that those things are moral over what God calls moral. You know? So it really comes back to an objective sense of morality, the problem of evil, and understanding how God can balance his own equation of his love and his justice by grace, and what God calls moral outside of what man calls moral. So I think it's really interesting how all of those just kind of flowed really well, because we didn't plan any of that other than just the topics. So
Well, you planned the topics.
yeah, sorry, I planned it.
You also picked the three that also flowed well. So
Yeah, but I didn't think it was going to go that well. Cool. Any other final comments before we wrap up? Been a lot of fun, man.
Yeah. It was fun.
Yeah, I
we were
enjoyed
all
these.
over today.
Yeah, we were. I enjoy these lives. I think it was really valuable. It was
It was for sure.
a lot of good content in this hour and 10 minutes.
I just think
It
it's
was
funny.
nice
we
and laid
mentioned-
back and easy to listen to.
What did I
He's
tell
not
you
gonna let
earlier,
that
Nick?
one go.
No, he's not gonna let it go. What did I tell you earlier, Nick? Laid back is relative, but morality is not. What was the The
Is that the next
tagline that you.
T-shirt?
What was the tagline that you thought of earlier?
If
You're gonna watch well.
watch
Watch
well.
well. Yeah.
All right. Well, I think that you should close us out, Nick, and you should use that tagline. That's what I think.
All right. Well,
Good point.
I don't know all the stuff to close out with. Thanks for listening, watching the live. You can find us on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, or X, all of social media, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, all of those things, all of the places that you get content. You can find us there. I'm going to throw this. You usually don't say this. Presented by Parker Brown Cinematography. And you can go to that website and get more info on the podcast and a very good video and photo and all kinds of stuff, business that you should hire. But yeah, so again, if you're going to watch well.
We'll see you in the next one, guys.